We have a quorum. It being 6:05, we shall commence. Sounding off with Emil, if we can call the roll.
Emil Dahlquist, present.
Dana Alera, present.
Kristen Piper, present.
Jack Lawrence, present.
Rick Mitchell, present.
Rosie Kennedy, present.
Rosie. And, okay. And we have our learned,
You're on the train.
Yes, I'm on my way. I'll be there shortly.
Oh, good.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
okay. Opening an agenda review. Jim, are you reviewing the agenda?
Would you like me to pull it up?
Have you, is this, are you reviewing the agenda or are we reviewing the agenda?
Oh, I can pull it up on, I had it on PowerPoint, and I figured I could do that if you would like.
Okay.
Sorry, your voice was a little muffled and I couldn't quite follow.
Yeah, we need a little more volume in this room as well as to you.
Nobody's ever told me my voice was muffled.
Yeah, no, it was different. It was more like he was, and I don't think this is the case, but it was more like you were too close to the microphone. I think there might be something that's causing some distortion.
It may be internal in my head.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that.
That's a long-standing technical problem.
One thing is that I need to be enabled to share my screen.
I can turn my computer off.
Whoa.
I guess we can't turn ours off.
Are we, how are we doing now? Is that any
Let me
better?
Try again.
He has to be like the owner of the Zoom. He has to be.
No, it won't let me share.
He has to request access.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'll be back.
And the recording's in process, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, it
Recording
looks
is in
like it's
process?
recording, yes.
All right.
We got a stereo.
Try the screen sharing now.
No, I know.
All right. Seems to be working now. All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you put it on slideshow
Yes.
so we're not looking at the frame of the controls?
I will. Although later in the meeting, we might go back and forth a little bit, because
That's good.
we'll get to it.
Okay.
All right. So tonight, Hamilton Master Plan, we're going to do a little bit of action planning tonight. We're working towards implementation. As you know, we've gone over
Sepulchral music.
yeah, like from another planet. Or maybe that's Philip Glass. All right, so as you know, we've done a fair amount of data sharing already and gone over several existing conditions, elements for existing conditions. And so tonight I thought we might get a little more into the action planning. We need to do that to move forward with a draft. And so we'll talk a little bit about the implementation plan and then some of the sorts of actions that might make sense to include and how we'll structure that going forward. And so that's kind of the theme for tonight's meeting. So a little more specifically though, so we will go over the project status, how we're going to do document sharing going forward. We got a, I said Google Docs, it should say Google Drive set up for us to share documents on. Draft action plan outline structure to go over a little bit. Then we'll spend some time talking about initial actions. As I mentioned just a moment ago, talk about the public participation plan and some events and dates, at least roughly, that we have in mind. The public survey and website, this is really just, kind of quick status report or update, I guess I might call it. And then we'll talk about confirming the next meeting and the agenda for that, and committee business. So this is our plan for the agenda this evening, but I wanted to, of course, leave it open to folks to add, subtract, move things around as needed.
All right.
All right. And if people are more or less satisfied with this, I'll just kind of move on.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, first thing is the status update, and you should all have received a copy this afternoon of the status update report. It's in the form that showed to the right. I'm not expecting you to read this, of course. I just have this up there for reference. It's the type of status report that I've provided in the past. Down at the bottom, though, I added something to it, which is recent updates, because I was feeling that while a tabular summary of what's going on the project is, I think it's helpful. It provides some structure for what is a fairly complex project when you're trying to get all these things to work together. It does that pretty well in like a single page. The thing that it doesn't do real well is show what's new and different. And so down at the bottom, I included recent updates and just a bullet list. And they are essentially rephrased here on the left-hand side of this slide. So new and different things. So we have a draft public outreach plan. We've decided to move the increase the number of master plan committee meetings so that we'll be meeting twice a month. I talk about it in here as being approximately bi-weekly, but it'll be on second and fourth Thursdays. So we'll keep our regular second Thursday meeting. We'll add a fourth Thursday meeting. And that's in order to move things forward quickly or expeditiously, maybe, and to provide more time for action planning and making sure that we're getting ready for, upcoming public events and things like that. The draft chapters. So we now have draft chapters for land use, economic development, natural resources, cultural resources, cultural and historic resources, community services and facilities, and transportation. And I know the master plan committee has not seen these yet. We have provided 3 of the, I think there's 6 of these, to Patrick, and he has given us comments back. We're in the process of addressing those comments. They're basically done, and we're going to post them as drafts onto that Google Drive that I mentioned. We'll get to how to access the Google Drive in a couple of minutes here. I just wanted to let you all know what's going on with that. So in the next day or two, you will see draft land use section. Let's see, the transportation section and the community services and facilities sections all posted up there, as well as the implementation plan draft structure that I provided to you, or that we provided to you earlier today. So you'll have all those things. That drive will also have meeting materials up there. So we'll start to move, migrate all those up there. And my understanding is Google Drive is the sort of preferred way for folks on the committee to do this. That's the preference of the committee, I should say. as opposed to the SharePoint that we were using before. I tend to agree with you guys. I think the SharePoint thing's a little awkward. So, anyways, so this is being transitioned, and you'll have those drafts. The public survey. So Kristen had just recently drafted up the public survey, 2-pager on each side of a page. We're going to put that into SurveyMonkey. My hope was maybe to have that done for you guys today, so I could show you the SurveyMonkey on the website. It's not quite ready yet. That'll be a couple more days. Expect to have that up or at least available next week at some point. And when that's available, I will send it to Patrick so that he can distribute it to you guys and you can see it in draft. And then the draft implementation plan. So that was sent along earlier, as I mentioned. And part of the idea this evening is to begin to populate that with action. And we'll continue to do that as we move forward with elements of the plan. So as elements of the plan are completed, we'll know a good bit about existing conditions. We'll have had some feedback on that, and that will lead to, help us. Lead us to that will help inform actions for the plan. Of course, will also include the information that we've come from the
Jim, you're breaking up.
that was done last November. And as we move forward with results of the survey, the idea is to do this in conjunction with all of you, and then get public feedback on it so that we can put together a master plan that has a good, strong consensus around it. So anyway, so that is the status report in a nutshell here. Before I move on to the next item, are there any comments or questions on that?
Just a question. We don't have a printed copy of the latest status report that he sent out?
Yeah, it came this afternoon.
No, but there's nothing available on a printed version, right? We want to run it so we can...
Sure.
Thank
I
you.
missed that. I came during dog walking time.
I'm not entirely sure what's being asked.
We're just looking to get a copy of the plan that you're showing us because we can't read it on the slide.
Oh, yeah, no, that was sent out by email. We'll put that up.
Patrick's making copies right now, so that's why.
Oh, is he? Okay.
So we're,
Now I understand what happened. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit of a disadvantage because I can't see what's going on in the room. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this at the moment? Or do we want to move on to the next thing? I know we got a busy agenda.
Yeah, let's go ahead, and Patrick will be back with the document in a minute.
Jim, you're breaking up
Okay.
a little bit as well. I don't know if your signal strength is going up and down. You're okay sometimes, but a little bit there, we lost you.
Okay, can you hear me okay now, Kristen?
Yep.
We can, yeah, but we'll interrupt you if we start not to be able to hear you, that's all.
Yep, you got it. So I think, so you guys know what happens is when I switch slides, I think sometimes, or when I bring up a document, that adds to the, I don't know, the RAM that I'm pulling from my computer. And I think that kind of kills bandwidth a little bit sometimes too. So I'll try and pause as I'm doing those sorts of things so that hopefully it won't break up as much. Anyways, so as I mentioned, we have set up a Google Drive site And the things that we're planning on putting up there include meeting materials and draft chapters. This is just a print screen of that Google Drive. There's nothing up there yet. Stuff will be populated over the next day or two. As I mentioned, some of the first things we put up there will be the draft chapters and the implementation plan.
Jim, have you sent us this? I don't think I have this yet. Have you sent us the link to this Google Drive?
Yeah, I will send that. I have not sent that yet. So
And-
I can email the link, and so you could get it just in an email. I'll also put it in the meeting summary that we do for this evening.
Jim, this is Kristen Piper. This is potentially a question for our chairs or Patrick or the rest of the committee, but you know, when you send out the link, I think it would be helpful for us as a committee to have direction on what we're supposed to review and how and by when. Because I could just imagine if those 6 draft chapters go up and we're all, you know, editing them, is that what we want to do? Do we want to approach it in a different way? So just asking for some direction from someone, whoever the right person is, to tell us how to review and when and what the preference is.
Right, and really, this is Dana, and just being thoughtful about, like, I myself in Google Drive, even being thoughtful about who can edit, who can suggest. Like, to Kristen's point, it's probably not great to have everybody have editing access, but you might want to have an ability for everyone to suggest edits.
Thank you,
Well,
Pat.
are the documents in Google Docs, or are they just in the Google Drive? Are they like
Are they
Word documents
PDFs or,
in
yeah.
Google? And I think that's a question.
Yeah, so
And-
we'll put the documents up in the Google Drive, and I think what I would recommend is that if you guys download them and review them, that comments that you provide on them, if you could provide those back as track changes, and we'll provide directions on this, and then. You know, when you're ready and you want to send them to us, if you could just email them and include, ideally, rename the file with your initials on it or something like that, would help too. And like I said, we'll provide directions on that. Does that sound amenable to folks?
That actually sounds like a recipe for a lot of potential duplication and confusion, actually. I think comments we have to figure out a way that people,
Is this different?
you know, whether there's a subcommittee or there is a point person that collects these and feeds them, because you will get comments that are spot on, spot off, duplicative, unreadable, ununderstandable. It sounds like not a good way to proceed, just taking random comments from 9 people.
I had a comment matrix that was set up when I worked on a project with Judy Barrett, and that was designed, I think she said it was designed in the military for some process, but it was actually really helpful. It was a spreadsheet that had, you know, what document, what page, like who, what page, what document, where, and what the change was. So, and it was all together, so then we as a committee could review it all together, and it was a document that was like a Google Drive, so we could put it in each, so it wasn't someone had to gather everything up and then make eventually the edits will have to be made once we agree on them, but in terms of, do we agree on the comment, it was a helpful tool. I can, and I don't know, Jim, if you have another tool that's similar to that, just to have comments all together. I mean, there was nothing magical about the spreadsheet, it just worked. So I can send that around for, if we want to review something like that for comments. It was just helpful because it was all in one place and it wasn't 7 different edits of documents.
Yeah, so what I've done in the past when doing this sort of thing is taken edits the way I described, and then put together a table, a summary table of the edits that I get. You know, if it's just simple changes in wording or you know, like if there was you know, a missing comma or something like that, don't do it. I don't do it for every single comment like that. Those are sort of minor edits and we just take care of them. But if there's a comment edit that you know, is intended to change the meaning of something or change the way something works, and summarize it in a summary table that indicates the part of the document where the change is being proposed, what the change is, and then a lot of times you'll get pretty similar comments from a number of different people. So I'd list out the folks who had similar comments, and then the proposed fix to that.
Would it be helpful to establish either a timetable or number of repetitions that we go through an edit process? Because otherwise this could become an endless, and I'd like to avoid the same process that we went through with the survey questions that went on for probably 3 months, 4 months. So, you know, I'm trying to just establish some parameters that, do we get one shot at it and that's it, which is fine with me, but I'd like to just establish, you know, we've got a process for making those comments, you incorporate those comments, and then the board reviews it once, decides it likes it, and then we move on, so that we know what the parameters of what it is we're doing.
I love that idea of one round of comments. If folks agree to that, then I'd be happy to do it that way, realizing, of course, that at some point we'll have a complete draft master plan that gets posted for public review and comment. We'll do a similar process. So are people comfortable with one round of comments?
I think it'll keep it focused. I think
Yeah,
there's some real benefit to that.
Yeah, I'd like to, I'm comfortable with that, and I'd like to add, I would like, for me personally, it would be helpful to have a very specific, like I would like to receive an email that says, please review the following draft chapters by X date.
Yeah.
That would be helpful to me.
And if you don't do it, you don't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And no, like, well, gee, I didn't get a chance, I'm sorry. Too bad. It's like you get it done or you don't.
Correct. But I would be looking for some just real clarity, like these are the chapters that you need to review by
There she is.
this particular date.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Agreed.
Excellent.
And I think, Jim, what you described on how to gather feedback and what Kristen described are very similar. The difference is it's either the committee members sending you our individual feedback and you compiling it into a spreadsheet, or us just putting our feedback into a joint spreadsheet. So I think the committee just needs to decide, do we want Jim to spend that time consolidating what we send him, or should we just put it into a spreadsheet that we can all see? I think we should just make that decision.
Yeah, if we collect up a draft, review it at one meeting, and then
Yeah, agree or disagree with the feedback and then move forward, but
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful to see all the feedback at once, because, I mean, some of it's going to be, this is incorrect, okay, it's incorrect, fix it. And then it's, well, in my opinion, I think we should do this. And in Rick's opinion, we should do something else. And that's where it gets kind of hairy, so I think it's helpful to have it all together. But I can send around that, that sheet, and and Jim, and we can kind of talk about what might be the easiest way, but I definitely want to try to preserve as many hours as possible to not do administrative-y stuff. But anyway, and I do think we need to put agenda items on when we comment to talk about those comments, and not, the sentence structure is, but, the subject matter, the kind of meaty comments that we might have difference of opinion on, to make sure we as a committee are in agreement.
Yeah. That sounds good to me. And in general, does it make sense if we have, maybe a couple of elements posted at the same time, that there would be a week turnaround for comments? Is that too fast? Is that reasonable?
I think that'll keep it focused.
I think a week's a little aggressive.
How long is a chapter?
It depends on the section, of course, but they're any place from 5 or 10 pages to maybe 20 pages.
So
And
how about,
and I should say there's a part of each element, so I'm talking about the narrative part of it. There's also a reference part of each chapter, and the reference part might be another 5 or 10 pages. So don't be surprised if you see something that's 40 pages long. There's really only 15 or 20 pages of text.
Instead of having a general rule, if there's variable length of these, why not have it posted up on the top as to when we're going to be discussing it, and simply have that date, and we can vary that depending on how long it is and how much input there needs to be, so everybody's prepared on a given day. Does that sound reasonable?
not to be a contrarian, but I'd like to see if we can standardize this so everybody understands what they're dealing with, because if we have a moving target, then people are going to get confused. So I'm going to suggest 10 calendar days, and that's it.
Yeah, 10 calendar gives you 2 weekends, so that's good.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yep.
And put the
Okay.
date on the top.
And again, I just really would benefit from the date at the top.
Yeah.
This is when it's due. That's what I need
Right,
to know.
flashing red sign.
Yeah.
A countdown,
We'll be done.
a countdown clock.
Agreed.
Due date, yeah, that's good. I like that.
Okay, so at the top, we'll put both the date of the draft, because I like to keep things versioned. A date of the draft, that the draft was produced or posted, and the date by which it needs to be reviewed.
Good.
Perfect.
Give me just a second.
And
Okay,
Jeff
and
Kristen
when
will
we
get
send out the
directions from you guys
emails
on
that,
our
we'll send out emails that indicate that these things are available too, so you'll get a notice that way.
It's funny, the anxiety produced from feedback. Just
I actually think it's even worse when you're on the
on
Zoom.
the other side.
You're alone.
Are you getting a lot of feedback, Jim, from us?
Not that much, a little bit here and there.
Maybe it's just right above my head.
There I got some.
Yeah. It's like a low hum of feedback. Anyway, okay.
It's like a meeting with Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you feel like you just have to, like, it's not all the way in, like, whatever, your guitar.
All right, next item on the agenda is the implementation plan and the draft structure. You guys should all have received that draft structure that was sent around. And it's basically broken up into 3 parts. One is an overview, which is just like a paragraph or so long that explains what the implementation plan is and what it's for and kind of how it works.
I know which
An
document I have.
implementation matrix, which I'll bring up
Did it myself.
on the next slide so that you can all see that again. But that's just a tabular summary of action items. And then a process, the implementation plan also describes a process for evaluation of the actions and the status of the actions, and what I call an adaptive management approach, which basically means like you guys are going to be implementing this plan over the next 10 or 20 years. Lots of things are going to change in that time. If we think back over the last 10 years, there's obviously been a lot of big changes, climate change and COVID and, various political changes and upheavals and stuff like that. All those sorts of things have an impact on your ability to implement actions. Sometimes it makes it go faster, sometimes slower. Sometimes it just changes your priorities altogether. And so there needs to be a routine process, I think, for going back and looking at actions, making sure that they're still appropriate. Assuming they are appropriate, that the time frame still makes sense, and that there aren't other changes that you need to make to the way you were planning on implementing the actions that you couldn't have known about initially. So I'll just go to the next slide real quick. So this is the draft structure of that matrix that I was just mentioning. So on the leftmost side, obviously has a place where you'd list out the actions. We'd probably do one of these tables for each chapter. Not that it would appear at the end of each chapter. It'd either appear at the beginning or the end of the plan probably, but that you'd have one, so you're capturing subject matter, each on its own sort of table, if you will, or own section. If there were multiple goals, which there typically are for subject matter area, then you would list those out in the light blue that's shown here, have the chapter name up there. Then the policy number, there's usually, when we're putting these sorts of things together, there's usually a nomenclature for goals and for policies so that you can keep them straight and you can talk about them. You can talk about the ones that are similar and back them that way. And the same thing with actions. So there's sort of 3 levels of things that get recommended in a plan typically. There are action items, which are usually pretty discrete, policies, and then goals. And the goals they're kind of visionary in nature. Along the top of the matrix, like to include an action lead. So that is the person or group of people that is going to head up implementation of the action. And then there's usually a lot of other folks who are going to support the action. They're going to have some participation in implementation, but they are not the leaders. And so those folks go in the action support column. Other stakeholders list out, people that maybe aren't directly involved in implementation, but are particularly interested in the action. The action type, whether it's a policy update, whether it's a physical change in infrastructure, things of that nature. Time frame, so that over what course of time things are going to get implemented. And then labor resources. We can do this in a couple of ways. A lot of times we'll also include a cost for action items. But the labor resources is the amount of staff hours or committee hours that's going to be necessary to get the action moving, because there's commonly two types of resource constraints that get in the way of action implementation. One is the cost of the item, and 2 is the amount of time it takes for somebody to shepherd it through. So anyways, that's the structure that we put together and sort of a description of it in a nutshell. Curious to hear thoughts about what we presented here.
Question, Jim, and maybe this is premature, and it will precede this action item matrix. Is when the implementation plan or implementation items for a particular element, take housing, transportation, whatever, will the implementation, or will that section have a near-term, mid-term, long-term prioritization? Because, as you said, this is going to be a document for some period of time, and the characters are going to change over time. So it would be helpful, I think, that somewhere either preceding this or within this, that there's some prioritization, and it could be via resources required, that it's a critical need. I mean, the capital committee did this. They, ranked, the immediacy needed, or so people reading it can say, oh, okay, this is an immediate thing we really need to jump on because it has real serious cost implications, environmental implications, whatever.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. So there are two ways that I find that things typically get prioritized. One is by urgency, how quickly they need to happen, and sometimes things need to be sequenced. Like, you're not going to build a new town hall before it gets designed. You're going to design it first and go through all the planning phases, and then you're going to build it. At least hopefully that's the way you do it. So one thing is urgency and sort of sequencing. So that's a temporal thing. The other thing is importance, and certain actions might be somewhat later in the process, but extremely important to you folks as a town or as a master plan committee, or however they were important. So we can certainly include maybe a high, medium, and low priority.
Yeah, I'm just trying to help. I'm just thinking of the people that, when they're handed this document, or new members show up, or a board or committee is handed this document and say, hey guys, you need to implement it. They have some way to sift through it and say, oh, okay, here's what we're supposed to be doing, and these are the key priorities that we need to focus on.
So let me see if I understand or not. Would you like to see like that high, medium, low kind of thing, or do you just want to identify maybe certain actions, maybe not in rank order or something like that, but there are just certain actions that are considered, I don't know if the right word's critical or essential or something like that, versus other ones that you want to do, but they're maybe not in that essential category?
I'm thinking this is a 10,000 foot as opposed to, a implementation specific project. In other words, take your example of facilities, and you say town hall renovation. So I'm looking for categories of near term because building is in serious deterioration, doesn't meet access requirements, has no sprinklers, wiring is dangerous, etc. So, filtering, you would think and go, oh, okay, that's an immediate need. I don't think, I'm speaking for me, other people may have a different opinion, that we need to go, well, first of all, you need to form a design, facility committee of the public. Then you need to go out and get a design architect. And then you need to get, all these steps. I don't think that's the level of detail that we're looking for.
So I think in the implementation matrix explanation, it does say that the matrix will assign timeframes. 1 to 3 years is considered short term, 4 to 7 years is considered medium term, and 8 to 10 is considered long term to complete each action item. Does that meet the need, or something?
Because
I feel like there's not the urgency isn't identified.
The time frame, yeah. So maybe there's the red, yellow, green, within those
Right.
time frames.
Yeah, so I typically think of those two things as being different and needing to be categorized different. I don't know if you folks are familiar with the idea of like a 4-square quadrant, and on one side of the quadrant is urgency, and on the other side is importance. And so if you're in the, say, upper left-hand corner, then that might mean that you're both high for urgency and importance. And if you're in the bottom far right quadrant, then you would be low for both those things. So that's
Jim, this is Emil Dahlquist. So the urgency and the time frame would be for specific action, because policy is policy. Goals are going to be just very simple, long-term goals. Could you have then maybe rate the, in terms of urgency, rate the different policies, and then have a list of the most important ones in that, so policy or strategy, all the ones that have a high priority, say, would be in that category. Again, I think I agree with Rick. There should be a time and an urgency level of identification on each one of these, and it's going to pertain to the action steps in this primarily, right?
Yep.
So it's possible you could organize it that way in terms of list the priorities. For number 1 priority, list all the action steps. Number 2 priority or policy, you'd list, the next level of urgency. I mean, that's another way to do it. You'd have to get together all of the components, all of the action steps that we're going to draft, and then sort them in terms of urgency.
I look forward to
Yeah,
that
and-
day when we have that whole matrix.
Yeah.
We start arguing about it,
Yeah.
which is so
I mean, that could be an interesting appendix. Like, that would be a really helpful, like, 30,000-foot view of all the action steps and where they fall in order of importance or urgency. Kind of like that idea.
So from the perspective of, because this is one of those issues that's pretty tough to solve unless you actually have
That's right.
actions in front of you.
Yeah.
That for the sake of the discussion tonight, that we look at ways to include both time frames, so both urgency and relative importance, and that we, plan to come up with some sort of matrix that reflects both those things, however we do it.
Yeah, why don't you, you should take a shot at it as what you think is best and most usable at the ground level.
Jim, just for clarification, are you going to generate this information, or do you want the steering committee to do the write-up on all of this first?
So I want to work with you guys to generate it. So as a first step, so one of the things that I wanted to do this evening was go over a couple of the subject matter areas with you folks, and see if there are particular actions that, based on some of the review of subject matter and the PowerPoints that we've done in the past and things like that, that there are certain actions that you guys feel are important and that bubble up. We could actually try and populate them into one of these tables as a group, just to sort of get a feel for how this works. And then we'll take that back sort of to our cave, if you will, and take a stab at pulling it all together. And then we'll pass that back to you guys again to review and comment on in the same way that you might on one of the existing conditions chapters. Does that make sense?
Well, I don't know. I'd sort of like to produce something out of a meeting time for everybody to review and then submit it, rather than try to do something on the fly in the next hour and a half or whatever. I think it takes a lot of time actually to think about all of these policies, strategies, and action steps. Be kind of hard to do, I think, on the fly.
Yeah, I don't think he's asking us to do that. I think I think what he's saying, and I could be wrong.
You might be right,
Is he's asking us to pick a theoretical subject area.
Oh.
Is that right?
Yeah, so sort of a little bit of both, I think. So what I would like to do is I think land use might be a good area to start with, and take a look back at the issues that we had identified for land use and opportunities and so on, and go through that a little bit and identify not like all the action items that you're going to have in your plan, but just some that come up tonight, and sort of go through and try and again populate the matrix. Who would be involved in implementation? You know, what the time frame might be, just to get a sense of how this fits together. Because in my experience, this aspect of planning is something that's typically best done by trying it out a little bit.
Yeah, but we're not. Here's my concern. I'm actually thinking Emil's got a point here, is we could go down a rat hole on this. You know, if you take housing, well, you know, that's a big subject. There's not enough of it.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt for 1 second? Because I think I heard something a little bit different. It sounded to me, Jim, like you are proposing that in your experience, it's a useful exercise for us to go through, not that, like, so if we were to do land use and come up with a couple of action items and go through the process, these may or may not be the ultimate action items. What I heard you saying is that you've found in the past, working with other groups, that doing that process helps us to better be able to do this process in the future. Not that it would be like that if we got bogged down, it wouldn't matter so much whether we actually all agreed. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. So that in other words, if there were like a land action item that, for example, I didn't really think was the perfect action item, I could let go of that and just let us go through the exercise anyway, and then at a later date I could say, you know, actually I didn't think that action item really was the best action item, and here's why.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason why it's helpful is because when you go through the process of trying to populate something like this matrix, you start to think about how the different action items fit together, who's best positioned to implement them, how others can cooperate in that process, and you start to get a sense of the overall resources that are necessary to really move forward with something. And that makes you sort of a more informed person when you're reviewing existing conditions and implementation plans that are part of the overall master plan. It makes you a more informed person, better able to comment on stuff.
I tell you, Jim, what really worries me is how do we communicate? How do we break out of isolation on this? I mean, we're all sort of talking to each other, but how do we get the word out to the town? How do we get some participation out of the town itself? I have very much in mind that we went through a whole exercise on rebuilding the town hall, in essence, and at the end of the day, it was just, we never figured out how to communicate it, and it just got dumped.
I'm going to say one more, and then I'm going to stop talking. But I guess what I'm hearing is Jim telling us what I'm hearing is that he's the consultant, and he's saying that he wants us to do this exercise. I think we need to decide whether we want to do the exercise or not. Like, I'm not saying that your worries about the future are not important. It's just that, like, he's just saying, I want to do this exercise because I think it'll be helpful to the committee for the future in creating this plan. It sounds like some people don't want to do the exercise. But I think we should just decide whether we're going to do what the consultant is recommending or not.
Does it?
Yeah,
work
and that's
in
okay. If you guys
isolation? I guess
decide you don't want to do it, we can move on to something else.
Yeah, that's my concern is, I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse, is we haven't even seen any of the draft plans, the recommendations, and going through an exercise is like, okay, we finished that exercise, but we really wouldn't be actually using those skills for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. So I'm going, wouldn't it be better if we had a finished or a draft product and say, okay, guys, this is what's coming. You're going to have to talk about this. We're going to have to talk about this in public. Let's go through an exercise to see how we populate this.
I think it's both and. I don't think it's either or. I heard Jim say that this exercise will help us provide more helpful and informed feedback on the draft chapters, which it sounds like is our next task that we're going to be doing. We're going to get deadlines and we're going to start reviewing the 6 draft chapters that are going to be in the Google Drive. And so this exercise should help us provide that feedback. And then I think, to your point, there will come a time when we will have to come up with the actual action items with public participation.
No, I appreciate that. And I hadn't thought of that way. But if I could just respond to that, is it would be a highly academic exercise. Let's talk about, and I'll give you a quick example, housing. Okay, housing would go to the planning board. Planning board controls zoning. So this committee going through an implementation plan is doing it from a perspective of no experience.
It's not implementation of housing. It's implementation of the master plan.
Well,
When we talk about an implementation plan.
I'm going to be focused on implementation because this plan is going to come out of the recommendations, out of the public process, and the final adoption of the plan, and the implementation is going to say, we recommend you do the following. And then it's going to fall to various organizations within town government to implement that plan. The collective knowledge here of the departments that have to implement that, whether it's finance, the Board of Selectmen, DPW, we don't have that knowledge or experience. I can speak for housing and the planning board, and I can tell you we had an implementation plan that we ran into things we didn't even know existed, that came flying out of the blue. So I'm just a little concerned that the group goes through an academic exercise and says, well, here are the barriers. I mean, we'd come up with some of them, political, financial, but I'm just not sure to what end that is a benefit without having some specific recommendations to say, oh, okay, well, build a new town hall. Well, Rosie knows what she's going to be running into and can contribute real life experience because she's lived it. So, whereas the rest of us haven't. So I'm feeling like, I'll stop.
I'm just worried that we do this exercise in isolation and find that the town isn't there. I mean, that's what happened with our plan.
You know what? Can I?
Yeah, we did that exactly with the whole plan for town hall.
But in the time we've had this conversation, we could have done the exercise.
I doubt it.
Let's just move. Let's do something.
I'm also
tonight.
sort of wondering,
Let's move forward,
as the
whatever.
master plan committee, aren't you folks appointed to represent the town and sort of help them go? Because not everybody in the town has time to participate at this level.
I feel like it's a little bit premature to do the implementation action before we get the recommendations from the chapters a little bit more
So let's move on.
coming together. That's all. I do think this is.
I'm fine with
really-
moving on.
And I'm willing to go through if it makes sense. I just feel like I mean, we have the land use, we barely have really read the narrative pieces of these chapters, and I guess I don't feel like I have a good handle on the recommendations from just what we know as in existing conditions yet.
I think the exercise was supposed to be hypothetical. I don't think we were supposed to be using exact. So, but it sounds like we should move on. But before we do, before we move on, one thing I just wanted to raise, Jim, is I see a sentence here in the implementation plan document that talks about the planning board being responsible for annual review of the action matrix and determining which items are priority in the coming years. One thing we talked about in the beginning of this process that Caroline had recommended that I think most of us really liked was creating some sort of implementation or oversight committee of the master plan to hold the town manager, the select board, the planning board, et cetera, accountable to make sure that there was action happening. And I don't think it can be, I think it needs to be a new group. I don't think it could be an existing group. And so I would like to just put that forward for consideration, because I think in master plans past, you know, maybe things haven't always been executed because there hasn't been that oversight committee or board or whatever we want to call it that was holding the people that need to be held accountable to actually implement the plan.
Well, I think as Rick said, there are lots of factors that tie into it, and I don't think in reality you can institute sort of a watchdog group to implement the plan. There are factors in town that vary, and it's an interrelated process. So I would just wonder if that would work.
I don't think it has to be a watchdog group. I think it's just a group whose job is to keep tabs on the master plan and the work and the prioritization and the urgency, you know, everything we're talking about, and make sure that, you know, the planning board is doing its part and the select board is doing its part, and, you know, whoever has the pieces, the action leads, they're still responsible for the work and to make it happen, but there is a group keeping an eye on the master plan at large to make sure it is being moved forward and it's not just collecting dust on a shelf, that, you know, all this work actually results in action.
Which is what it did last time.
Exactly.
What?
I think both comments were really
Like to
valuable,
just
and I think we should talk
Bullshit.
about this, but maybe
Yeah, maybe this is not the time to discuss it, but I just wanted to put it out there because I noticed that makes me think that it's the planning board's responsibility, and I think that's not what we had talked about in the past.
I think that's a fine idea, but I think we ought to table it until we get to the end, and then decide, okay, what do we do with this?
or at least the
good.
middle. Let's get it.
So for the purposes of the draft, I'm not sure if you would like me to do this or not, but rather than have planning board in there, I could just put like a series of 3 X's or something like that, or to be determined or whatever.
Well,
so
you should
so that
put it
we
in-
don't forget the idea of having an implementation committee, but we don't name it yet.
Yeah, you should put it where it logically goes: housing, planning board, infrastructure, DPW, under Board of Selectmen, or whatever, cultural assets, to, you know, wherever that fits logically. And then, you know, we can move it around or put other people in charge, but, you know, for the purposes of logic and getting this process to move forward, just put it where it logically would go. And then later on, those in charge of implementation can decide, no, it goes someplace else.
I'm
So
good with
two
TBD.
things. One is who implements, the action lead, and 2 is a committee that oversees the implementation of the master plan, making sure that the actions still make sense, making sure that the plan that was laid out still makes sense as a whole.
Well, you know, I love the academics, and I love the theory, but it breaks down in the face of reality, because people change, they come and they go, priorities change by the day, by the month, So I think rather than constructing this grand academic scheme, is put them where they belong, where they logically should go, where responsibility is clear or has some clarity. Then later on, when we get to the end, the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, the Planning Board, the Town Manager, the Director of Planning can decide it needs to move. It needs to be involved with a collective of those people to implement that specific item.
So I think we're talking about two different things, so
Agreed.
that's what I was trying to say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the way I would envision it is very similar to the steering committee. Maybe there's representation from each of the town boards and committees, and then maybe there's some at-large members, and that committee's responsibility is just to make sure that the town manager isn't forgetting about the master plan, the select board isn't forgetting about the master plan, and that the topics, the action steps and the things that we're going to recommend in this plan as a community are actually being taken into consideration, conversations are being had. And yes, the topics have to go to their board or their committee, but there's just like us, making sure that it keeps moving forward over the next 10 to 20 years. So I think, we should move on, but I just wanted to throw it out there because I think wherever it says the planning board will be responsible, I like your suggestion. Maybe we just say to be determined who will be responsible for ensuring the master plan is, as a whole, prioritized and implemented.
So you'd have an independent implementation committee.
Correct. That is what I'm proposing.
I think you're going to have to have something like that, and there's got to be some means of communication. That's the big problem, is we really have no means of communication now. I think a community newspaper is going to have to come along somewhere along the line here, in some form, shape, or form.
Well-
But anyway, let's go. I mean, whatever.
Actually, I think it should, if this plan actually reflects what it was intended to in the RFP, that's going to be, most of these implementations are going to be based on a cost-benefit analysis and on a financial analysis. So the implementation and the priorities should be pretty damn clear when we get to the end, that there's serious cost-benefit consequences to the recommended items in the plan. And I hope that's what's going to come out of this, because then it will be telling to everybody. They're going to go, okay, it's not theory, it's not academics, it just didn't appear. They did some financial cost-benefit analysis, and those recommendations have some substance in financial reality to the citizens of the town, and they can make some decisions based on what they think is most important to their pocketbook.
And how's that going to be communicated? That's the real problem. I think how do we do something that's just not going to sit in isolation and die of the usual death?
Ideally, this should be a feedback loop. It should come out with recommendations that are based on reality, based on public input, and then there's a plan. And the public, when Board of Selectmen, the FinCom, DPW, town manager makes a decision, you can say, listen, this is a direct cost benefit to the town. We are implementing this because it's going to save money or it's going to prevent a particular problem, and we've evaluated, or at least got some basic information that tells us it will be expensive as hell to avoid implementing this particular recommendation. So, you can't get any plainer than that. They may say, I don't like it, go to hell, which they do all the time.
And did, in fact, with this.
What item on the agenda are we addressing right now?
I think, I think we probably do.
Drive it.
Yeah. I think that's a great segue to the public participation and education plan.
All right, I have to buzz through a couple of slides here because we had something else planned. All right, public participation. So, we've drafted up this public participation plan. I'll just kind of describe it briefly. So there are 6 items here, as I'm sure you can see. They include the master plan committee meetings, which are all public meetings. Visioning workshop that was done back in November. The draft plan review workshop, which is planned for the future, probably around September. The public hearing for the master plan, which we'd anticipate would be in about December. And then there are 2 items that we've been asked to include, and they weren't really in the original scope of work. They were kind of discussed vaguely, but there weren't specific items for them. But we've agreed to include them as what I'll call zero budget items. So we're doing them complementary to the rest of the plan. They don't have a budget associated with them. And those are the community survey, public survey, and the project website. The community survey, we're obviously doing that in conjunction with you folks, but in terms of getting it into SurveyMonkey, posted and analyzed, that's stuff that we will do for you. And that'll become part of the project website. And let's see, so this lays out specific deliverables that will come from each of these public participation elements or items, schedule for getting them all done, who is leading the item and who is participating, and then next steps and overall status for where they are currently. So that's this public participation plan in a nutshell, and I guess I'd like to leave it open to comment at this point.
Can I make a request? This is Kristen Piper, to add the summary of the visioning workshop from November to the public project website. So add that as a next step. Just because I know there were some comments about folks wondering how, we were going to loop back with them. And so I think that's a kind of easy way to do that. And we can point to that meeting summary on the website once it's there.
I just wrote.
Yeah, so the request is to actually put that on the website and not just in the Google Drive?
Yes, I think we should. It says that there was a workshop summary produced in January, and I think we should add that summary to the public website. In addition to adding the action items from the workshop to the actual master plan draft. So add the visioning workshop summary to the public website.
Did you guys took photos during that workshop, right? Weston and Sampson?
I did too.
Okay.
Yep.
So we have some.
They're actually, to some extent, they're embedded in the summary document that was produced.
Okay. I mean, it's just kind of, to Kristen's point, I mean, just we're listening. Like, participate. This is what you're saying. Like,
Yeah.
I think I agree. It's important to just let people know.
Can we talk about the community survey and how we get people to know that it actually exists and respond to it?
Yes.
I think that's the next agenda item.
Good.
Do we, so are you guys done with this, the public participation plan?
Just quickly on this. So we have November. We have this survey. I feel like, and maybe it's not necessarily Weston and Sampson, but it's what Caroline, what she kind of did well was give us some tools that we can be present at other events of just like business cards and like flyers. And so if it's not necessarily Weston and Sampson, but like, town meetings coming up, like we're here, here's a card for our website. Like, I think it's important for us as a committee to touch those touch points of things that already exist to keep this conversation going.
Agreed.
Maybe in a little bit more of an informal manner, but just keep the drum beating a little bit. So I just want to make sure we're thinking about that, and I know we've talked before about what events are happening. How do we want to try to include conversations about the master plan in those events, formally, informally. So I just want to make sure we're thinking about that, because there's a lot of time between now, I mean, September 2022, December 20, there's just, people are going to forget about it.
Well, and there's
Time.
not a lot of time
things.
between now and town meeting. That's coming right up. And that's, I mean, the people that attend town meeting are
Involved.
our target group, right? They're the people that are gonna, so we need to make sure that at least at town meeting, we have some good communication.
Right.
Right.
And what do we want to, I mean, we have the board still. We have the cards. The QR code on the cards that Caroline made, is that the same, that will take us to the website? I hope.
I'm actually not familiar with the card that you're talking about, so.
Okay, so we can talk online about that, because I don't want to give people cards to a QR code that doesn't work. But we have like that stuff that we can like put in a basket and say, hey, yay, we're here. And whether or not we want to do boards, or I think we still have a bunch of handouts, what is a master plan? That kind of stuff. So I think we need to decide between now and April 2nd, like, do we just want kind of a table and just like do we
Survey
wanna
coming,
do
take the
something?
website link.
Do we want to
and-
have more copies of the survey for people who didn't? I know I'm jumping around in topics, but the survey, so we did a 2-page, what we were allowed to do is a 1-page back and front to put in for the warrant mailing. So we have that 1-pager that went out in the warrant.
Went out today.
I saw, it came today. I didn't open it yet.
Went out today, but we don't have a website link on there. So it pretty much, we'll see you at town meeting. Please come.
Yeah.
Drop your survey off. So
And what about in terms of concrete information? I don't know how long the document is about the visioning summary. Maybe if that's a page on both sides, maybe we could hand that out. So
This is what we heard in November.
or at least have a couple, like, a couple pictures or couple table copies if people wanted to.
Should we create a little subcommittee to plan for town meeting?
Sure.
Since it's in 2 weeks, right? Or no, a week, 10 days.
It's,
10 days.
Coming right up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it might be helpful to just like take that offline.
Yes. Yeah. I think we all agree. I mean, we'll all be there. So I think we all agree we want to have some presence. So, but anyway, just moving forward, I want to make sure, we have that box of stuff and cards but so Jim, like whatever that kind of production of those things and I don't know. I think I have like 3 boxes of cards still, but if I need to check to make sure with you the QR code works. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think the QR code will work because we transitioned the website because the original one on Social Pinpoint wasn't working very well. And so we moved over to Wix. So I think that's completely, if that QR code was queued into the project website,
Okay.
it would-
We'll figure
yeah, it
out
would need to, the QR code would need to be refreshed, shall we say.
I did just want to throw an idea out there, and I don't think we have to spend time discussing it. I'll send a follow-up email probably to Jack and Kristen and Jim and Patrick, I would think. But my husband teaches 8th grade civics at the middle school, and they have to do an annual civics-related project. And so he knows, of course, of my participation in this group. And so we had been talking, what if the 8th graders created a survey, a middle school and high school friendly survey based on our survey, administered it, collected the data, et cetera, and then we used it in our process in some way. Maybe they do a presentation to us or, something. So I think the details need to be worked out, but does that sound like something the committee would be interested in getting feedback from middle schoolers and high schoolers in Hamilton and Wenham? Well, and it would be
It
about
should create the question. I mean,
that's
basic, like, who are you? How old are you? Like, but they should create, like, what's important.
It's a pretty substantial, like, it has to be a certain weight, so yeah, it would be them creating the survey, administering it, collecting the data, et cetera, and then giving us the data to use how we see fit. But again, if that doesn't seem like a valuable use of people's time, I don't want to push that.
So can we recreate what we did for the first public event? I mean, that's essentially what we're trying to do here, but direct them to the survey.
Maybe even if we don't have a card with a
QR code.
QR code, maybe just put the name of the website so that people can reach it that way. If we know what the website address is. And I think it might be interesting to people to actually have the results of the survey. I mean, the visioning session, as long as it's not too long. I mean, we can condense it down even more and say, here, we would like your input too, and take the survey on the website or something like that. But just so it's not just photos, which are certainly very nice, but you also want to say, this is what we've done so far. Oh, I agree with that. Oh, I'd like to see something else. And it might draw people in more. So,
Yeah. Well, and then we had the wordgrams, right, from the,
yeah.
Word clouds. Yeah,
So,
Word clouds, yep.
yeah.
word clouds, wordgrams. Yeah, so Jim
Yeah.
or Patrick, if you can send us again, since we don't have the Google Drive totally set up yet, but the results from that meeting, so we can see if we can use some of that.
Sure.
And then, what was I gonna say? We'll do that, and then we'll try to figure out kind of offline subcommittee to get ready for town meeting.
would it make sense to ask the moderator if you can take 2 minutes to do a brief introduction and flash the website up on the screen for people at town meeting?
Jack and I met with the town manager, and with Patrick, met with the town manager, and he said he would ask the moderator. I'm not sure if that's been done.
I will make sure that happens.
For like 2 minutes, like,
Oh, yeah, you get 2 minutes and you're done.
not more. Will the website be ready to go? Is it ready to go enough? Like, it doesn't, page 1 ready to go at least?
Yeah, so it's, here, hold on a second, I'll show you.
Will it drive them to survey is the question.
Right, and then the follow-up is,
Yeah,
would the
well-
survey be up and ready by April 2nd on the website?
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. Hold on just a moment.
So, some of the obvious things is Facebook. Do we have any kind of presence there or use that as a tool?
Kristen is our social media liaison from the
Oh, good, thank God.
Informally.
Informally.
I just posted a couple of posts about the visioning workshop, and that seemed to work well. So happy to do, a similar thing.
Town has a Facebook webpage.
Yep. I'm a member of all of them, even the new one.
So, were the schools able to send out an email to all the parents in the school system?
About the visioning?
Yeah.
Yes, it was in, I don't actually know whether it was an email, but it was in the superintendent's report, which is widely read. It was in his report, and it is, I'll defer to the parents in the room, but that's the feedback I get, which is that it's a weekly report that people really do read. It's, I think Rosie was saying, it's a one-pager, so it's, we could do, are you asking about what going forward, what we could do?
Well, yeah, the survey is really what we're driving here, I think. So, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I think we can, it's important to get the word out, and so, yeah, we can get it. Once we have we need specifics about exactly how they do it, right?
Yeah, and I think we'll need to know when, so this is the website, so is it live now at a website?
It is actually live. It's not what's referred to as optimized. So if you were to Google like the Hamilton master plan, this probably wouldn't come up. If you had the exact URL up here and you put that in, you could get to the website.
So what is that?
So,
Master plan.
Hamilton masterplan, all one word.com.
Okay.
Yeah. And so on this, there's a tab or a page, if you will, for engagement. And one of the items that's going to be in here is the community survey. And that'll be the survey on SurveyMonkey. We'll just link it in.
Town has a newsletter sometimes.
No, it's back online every other week, I think.
Oh, okay. Could go there.
So-
Are you talking about it comes from Lori Wilson? Yeah, yep, yep.
It's every 2 weeks.
And
Does that newsletter go on the town website by any chance?
Friday.
Friday.
Sorry, Jim, what did you say?
Does the newsletter that was just mentioned go on the town website?
No, it's emailed to a mailing list.
Okay.
It could go on the town website, but the town website is,
So can we go back to the newsletter for a second? If we gave you a QR code that would get you to the community survey, would the newsletter, would they include that QR code and say like, hey, if you want to get to the community survey, here's the link, or you can scan this QR code and go straight to it?
Yeah, I think you should have a QR code for the survey anyway, so we can put it in anything that we are putting out.
Yep.
Hyperlinks.
So the QR
And
code for the
hyperlinks.
site,
Both.
or the survey for that matter, is really easy to generate. That's no problem. It's just a matter of how you get it out there in the world.
so when this is live, can you send the master plan committee all the links and let us know that it's up and running? Because I can then send it to Jay Burnham and Bob Gray, and because they have an emailing list of probably 200 people. They tend to reach an older group of townspeople.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Well, and we want to think about, like, I'm thinking, like, if we put it through the schools, we're getting sort of the parents. You're talking about the older people, and I think we need to talk to Lauren about how do we get to the young people that don't have anybody in the, that aren't there yet.
Aren't
What's our
there
best bet?
yet?
That'd be the Facebook.
You're not yet in school.
I would say,
Oh.
yeah. I mean, that's me. My kids aren't in school yet.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Facebook will help with that.
You're in the.
I'm about to.
Well, then aren't you really trying to capture them via social media?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we want to make sure that we're targeting the correct, I mean, I guess that's where Kristen's going to come
Yeah,
in, the correct social media, right? That want to make sure we're in the right.
Yeah, God forbid we actually do a direct mailing to every household in town with a postcard that says, master plan survey link.
We did a direct mail of the survey to every single household in the warrant, so hopefully they'll fill
Survey
it
is
out
in the
and
warrant.
The survey, yes.
bring it back to town meeting.
Yeah.
The
But
whole
yes,
survey?
Yeah.
It's 2 pages.
Is it printed in?
Wow, it must be in like size 2 font or
No,
something.
we had to condense it. Amo was very helpful in helping me organize the sheet
Oh, that's
into
wonderful.
2 pages.
I know, I wish
It's on the
I
last
saw the
page.
warrant, I didn't open it up because it just came today.
There's a survey inside and it says, see you at town meeting.
Yeah,
I was warned that it's just one. You might have multiple people at that household,
Yeah,
so it's just one, but it's the message to
Yeah.
people that we're doing this,
Yeah.
and if you're
Yeah.
interested.
right.
that
So,
would be a great problem to have if people are complaining that they only got one survey.
Fighting with your
That would
partner
be-
to like fill out the survey. I don't want to fill it out.
We really did want the QR code or the link there, so if you didn't want to do the paper and bring it back, but we just,
so a town,
it went out when it went out, so.
so a town mailing probably is going to be $4,000 or $5,000 max. Got any money floating around?
Well, but we already did it, so why do we need to do it again?
We have
Because
paper
in
copies.
advertising and marketing, it's repetition, repetition, repetition. You assume that people are actually reading the warrant. I can guarantee you that probably maybe 25% of the voters in this town will actually pick it up and look at it.
Agreed, but I also think there's a fairly large overlap between the people that would fill out this kind of a survey and would open the warrant. I would think that there's a overlap, like,
Yeah, we don't want those people. We want new people.
well, that's
Well,
the
I think-
reality, though. Like,
And that's why we'll
QR
post it
code
on
website
Facebook.
and-
We'll put it on social media. We have our different mailing lists. I think we do what let's see if the response is abysmal, then maybe we can talk about sending out another round.
Well, actually, you want to be doing this, the whole idea in marketing and advertising is a blitz. You hit them from every angle you can, and you do it repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly. So it's, you don't exclude anything. So I'm just saying that if the town had the wherewithal to spend a few $1,000s, this would be yet another way to remind people that they have an opportunity to participate in this, because there's a wide section of the population that does not exist in social media land. So, and
Yeah, we got maybe 150 people at town meeting, and there's what, 7,500 people in town?
no, there's 5,400 registered voters.
5,400?
Yes, 7,600 residents.
And what do we usually get at an election, a town election, 1,000 people, 1,200 people?
You typically get maybe 10 to 15% of the electorate. So that's 540. So 90% of the people are not participating. So that's why I'm saying you got to go every angle you can to hit them.
I think every angle's only going to hit the same people, that's the
Well,
problem.
but that's why we have to look at what else is happening. What other, I mean, the big Little League parade, the big, that we did the shop local. What else is happening that different groups are at? So we can be like,
Okay, so how about?
and then.
Okay, so how about
to-
involving the rec committee? How do we get the rec committee and their website, their mailing list? Yeah, I mean, so let's start thinking about, we talked about the schools, talked about the rec committee. All board chairs should receive a written or email saying, this is happening, please announce this at your committee meeting. Many of them are televised, so they'll get out that way. Where else?
Library and
Ooh,
senior
there you go, library.
for hard copy.
Jim, do you think you can get the survey up by Tuesday, the 29th, so we can start doing blitzes on the 30th? So we have, and then the superintendent's
Yeah.
report will come out on Friday, and then we can try to figure out, at least within that, if we, as a group, like, what's going out and what day is it, so we can try to put it, whether it's rec or schools or.
Can announce it at the select board meeting on April 4th, so that'll be good.
Right, but April 2nd, yeah, right.
It's like town meeting and then
Right.
at the select board meeting on the 4th, that would be good.
Yeah, all of that would be good. So,
What about the election is the 7th, so we could
Yeah.
have like paper copies or QR code at
yep.
the rec center at the voting.
Yeah, I can
talk to the precincts.
town clerk.
Okay, so March 29th, it'll be up on the website, and you can send us a link and the website and the QR code by
Yep,
the end of day, March 29th. So, and then we can then take that information and feed it into
Is
other
there a
places.
due date? Is there a,
Well, we haven't decided when we want to start getting, like, close the
Right.
survey.
well, that was my question.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I didn't know when we were going to be able to do it online yet until today.
All right, so just, on the, by the 29th, we're going to get the info. That's what,
That's,
so that, okay.
we're
Just
targeting.
Yeah, I'm
Jim
just
to-
making sure that that's like, I'm writing it down.
Yeah, get us
And
the
then,
info.
so that we can get it out on, before
yeah.
the 2nd.
And we should probably have like 2 or 3 sentences as to what this is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, Jim, you can put that to master plan survey. I'm sure
yeah,
someone-
so do you mean like an introduction for the survey?
No, just when we send out, or when we do the media posts,
Oh, I follow you.
this is a master plan survey for this purpose, please click. We want to listen, want to hear from you. I don't know, something jazzy and marketing-y. Something to make people click it and actually finish it. And it's short.
2 pages, front and back, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see, I just want to clarify this. So I'm sending you, obviously putting the survey up there, and then when the survey's up there, I'm sending you the link to the survey and the QR code for the survey, and, a couple of sentences explaining the purpose.
Yep.
And then that'll get distributed around, right?
Then it's our job to send it out to the world.
Yep. Sounds good. Okay, so I think we covered both the website and the survey at the same time there.
Should we talk a little bit about Rosie's questions, though? How long should we keep this open for a month? And close it?
Yeah, a month and a half is what I would do. And what I do is you'll get most of your traffic on it in the first week and a half. About 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks in, send out a reminder and say like, hey, if you want to participate, the survey is closing on such and so a day. If you have some way to email that information out to as many people as possible. And you might want to do it again or make some sort of announcement again the day before you close it. If you did that, what I might recommend is, as you guys are going to the town meeting, as part of that you make a reminder of this and remind folks of the closing date.
Okay.
All right. All right, so this, we updated the transportation map that we showed you last time. We're kind of using some of the information that's in the background here as the base map. Hold on a minute and make the map bigger. So you can see now we've added in several street names and a couple of key spots, the T Station, the Council on Aging, CADA site. In addition, we've, for this particular transportation map, this wouldn't necessarily go on every map, but for the transportation map, we've added the sidewalk areas on streets where there are sidewalks, you can see them. We've collapsed some of the information. Like before, we had sort of 3 categories for DCR, trails, and gravel roads. That's now collapsed into 1. We've collapsed some of the railroads. So you have the MBTA line in purple going through here, and then other railroads are just in black, rather than having, a bunch of different railroads on here. And then, again, this is just for transportation, but the bridge conditions are listed as well, so you can see those.
Hey, Jim, where's our other railroad?
Right here, I believe. Goes right through there.
Nope. That's like my backyard. It's not a railroad. It's a gas line.
There is no other railroad in town.
That is a, well, I don't know what that is, but it's not a railroad. Huh?
It's
Right away?
Did it used to be a
Gas line. You can
railroad?
walk on it. It's like a path.
There may have been tracks there a million years ago that now that's where the gas line's there.
But it certainly doesn't go all the way, like, it's got it going all the way.
It used to go to the lake and they would
To get
harvest
ice.
ice.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Okay, I don't know why that information exists in GIS, but it does. But we'll take it off the map, obviously, since it's not there.
Just change it to gas
Like,
line.
I mean, it has it going all the way.
Maybe it's an underground railroad.
It's a subway.
It's,
Get the teeth.
I don't know, I mean, I don't know that we want to, how much it matters, but I mean, if you follow that railroad along, that is, it kind of goes along, I believe that's School Street there, correct? Connecting 22 to Bridge Street, whether, if everyone sees that, which has a sidewalk, and it isn't on this map.
Cutler Road looks like it's got an extension that goes all the way to Bridge Street. I think that's a bridle trail.
Cutler Road.
I'm sorry, what kind of trail, Jack?
Cutler Road, it's a bridle trail. I think you can walk it or horse it, but that's about it. There is,
Oh, okay. A bridle trail is a trail for walking horses. I hadn't heard that term before.
That's a big one in Hamilton.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah,
I'm not really
I live
sure
in
what you're
Warwick,
talking
Rhode
about,
Island,
though,
where there
Jack.
are no
This-
horses.
Cutler Road, you can drive all the way through Cutler. It's just dirt.
Yeah,
Cutler Road.
it's a rough
Cutler
road.
Road comes to 1A
Yeah,
and stops.
correct.
Well, then what's this road goes all?
Oh, yeah, that, you're right. That is a,
one that goes by the cemetery.
that is like a path. Yeah, and it's,
Part of
and
it's
it's not
being
even,
blocked
it's,
off,
it's
yeah.
like a, some of it says no
I
trespassing.
think it's blocked off.
Yeah,
it's a
point.
but it's a
It's a
trail.
riding
Yeah, it's a
trail.
trail.
And some guy with a shotgun standing there.
Yeah, exactly.
Get off.
So one of the things that we will do along with providing you those narrative existing conditions is we will provide the maps that we're developing. If we can get, when we post them in the Google Drive, we'll ask for comments back on those. If we could do the same sort of thing that we're doing with the narratives, like give you guys a week to turn them around or something like that, or 10 days, I think is what we said before, then it would be very helpful to get all those comments all at once.
It's really hard to understand downtown. I know on Shop Local, we had a lot of people, a lot of people live downtown. And there's
I'm sorry.
There's no streets that, everyone looks for, okay, where's Railroad?
Oh,
Where's Willow?
okay.
Where's Union? And it just kind of follow those.
Looking for an inset.
paths.
You already asked for that.
Whether it's an inset or label some streets downtown, between, I see Asbury way up top here, but Asbury even just downtown, Asbury, Willow, Union, Linden and Railroad is kind of what I just, in terms of kind of people placing themselves.
Probably an inset would be best.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, an inset would be best.
I think an inset, definitely.
It's just
Okay.
a high-density area that you do have quite a bit of, obviously, high-density people.
I don't know that we do that for every single map, but maybe for the transportation map, and I don't know, there might be one or two others where it makes sense as well.
Transportation and land use are important to understand in terms of an inset, because it is a dynamic area.
Yeah. And when you guys refer to the downtown area, I imagine different people have different ideas of how far that extends. About what area are you talking about?
If you correspond it with the commercial zoning district, that's kind of the heart of downtown, if you just look at the land use map and this map.
Okay.
I have no problem expanding it out a little further for this particular map, but I think that's at least your central point that you're looking at an inset, if everybody else agrees.
All right. So now we are down to kind of the last steps here. Next meeting we have scheduled, or will have scheduled, is April 14th at 6 o'clock. So since we're doing every second and fourth Tuesday, that's the way that would fall. So we have 3 weeks between this one and the next meeting. And then basic agenda items, I wanted to just kind of lay those out in front of folks now. So it would be project status update, where we are with the survey. We should have, a fair amount of responses by then, or at least have some sense of how that's going. We'll have Eric in to talk about housing existing conditions. And I was thinking that we would talk about economic actions, but maybe we'll take that item off for now, given the discussion tonight about the way you'd like to do action planning.
Jim, if we are going to be tasked with reviewing any of the 6 existing condition chapters that are available and going to be posted on Google Drive, we could do that exercise for one of those, because then we will have read the draft chapter, right? So as long as the deadline lines up.
Yeah, would you guys like to do land use? It's a nice meaty one.
Sure.
So that means we'll read the land use chapter, provide feedback either in one spreadsheet as a committee or to Jim, who will then consolidate it, and then we'll discuss it at the meeting and start to pull out action items as an exercise. Is that a fair assessment?
So, does this include economic actions or on the?
No, we're saying we're replacing economic actions with the land use
with the
chapter
exercise.
review.
Okay. Can I just ask? Go ahead.
Well, no, and just focus not on economic actions.
Got it.
but the land use chapter.
I just want to know what we're eliminating. So, Jim, could you give me a 30-second overview of what you were thinking in terms of economic actions?
So initially, I was planning this evening that we would have done some action planning for a couple of different chapters, and that by the 14th, we'd be ready to move on to another section, and that section would be economic actions.
So I don't think we're eliminating it. We're just.
No. I just this is a particular interest to me, so I'm trying to understand where it fits in, and.
Is the question, when would we review economic actions if we don't do it on the 14th?
So what is the substance of economic actions? Are we talking about business, or are we talking about the state of Hamilton, or are we talking about economic actions that are going to be driven by some draft recommendation?
I think all those things are potential things to talk about as part of economic actions. So definitely the state of the economics in town. Definitely, where market analysis and analysis of existing economic conditions sort of, what do we want to say? Compels, it's not quite the right word, that's too strong, but where it might lead to additional economic actions. So that would be part of it. Yeah, it could be all the things you mentioned.
Sounds like that actually could chew up a whole agenda.
Well, what Jim is talking about is doing the action planning exercise that we wanted to do tonight, that we nixed.
No, I got that. I want to know what's coming after that in terms of economic actions.
We need to read, we agreed as a committee tonight that we want to be able to read and respond to the draft economic existing conditions chapter before we do the action planning. So we have to wait until we have that chapter.
I understand that. I just want to know the content of that. It's the heart of this entire plan. That's what's going to drive implementation, is the cost-benefit analysis of what each of these subject areas and the recommendations they make. What are the cost-benefit implications? This has been the heart of this, from my perspective, since the beginning. And we have seen nothing yet in terms of the current state of Hamilton, where we are now, so that the public and this committee understand the current status and the economic foundation of the town. And so they understand where we are now, and then the recommendations of where the recommendations say we should go, and what's the cost benefit. So that's all I'm trying to understand is,
Would that tie in with John Prulage's?
oh, of course.
I mean, that's.
Oh, yeah, no, that's
Very complicated.
that's all part
A
of,
lot of sort of everybody reading all the.
that's all, that should be all baked into that.
I agree, yeah, that's,
So I just want to know when that comes, what we're going to be digesting.
I think what you're asking for, Rick, potentially is the fiscal impact analysis, which looks like it's going to be discussed in June, July, August, pending completion of Task 4, which is the master plan chapters.
Right, and that's
So I
why
think
I was trying
June-
to get from Jim what we were going to be getting.
Right, so there are two chapters related to what you're talking about in the master plan. And one of them is the fiscal impact statement that was just mentioned, or analysis, excuse me. And one of them is economic existing conditions and economic development. They are closely related, but they are two separate elements.
Oh, yeah,
And
very much so.
previously, there was a presentation that was given, it was actually given twice, on economic development. And so the results of that, the actions that might come out of that, or the analysis that might come out of that, was what I had in mind when I was talking about economic actions.
Okay, thank you.
I would have said that we probably heard the economic existing conditions presentation, not an economic development presentation, if they're two distinctly different things.
Yeah, I'm whatever he's got.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So, just if we're gonna do that before the 14th, which is the next meeting, how we comment, I'm happy to work with Jack and Jim. If someone else wants to help us decide, that would be helpful.
Could you explain where you're going?
Just the way in which we want to comment, whether we want to have a matrix that we comment into and then have it all together, or we want to all comment individually and send it to Jim.
Oh,
I just want to come to that decision with some of you.
Well, my 2 cents on it is that if it's easy for you to create the matrix and it's something that you can just drop into Google Docs, that sounds like an easy way to do it. If that's hard to do, then, we can go ahead and do it the way that Jim's done it with other groups. That's,
I do like the idea of being, instead of sending our comments individually to Jim, which may be repetitive or contradictory, I kind of like the idea of being able to see in real time everyone else's comments in a shared matrix so that we could add to something or
just say ditto.
or say, I disagree, let's talk about this during a meeting. So I'm leaning towards Kristen.
and Jack and Jim will
decide. Well, okay, I'll help. Yeah. But I'm already telling you which way I want to go. I'm biased.
Yeah, no, I
I'll
think
send out
it's
an
worth
example
distilling.
to everybody.
Okay.
so
worth
just,
distilling
so
this
just
thing
be
down.
clear, because the first, I thought at the end of the last discussion, we were sending them to Jim. We had 10 days to return those to Jim. So now you're suggesting that we're going to be doing something different, which is fine. Just so, please be clear about what it is that you're expecting us to do.
Yeah, we just need to decide what
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is. But
Okay.
we want to make it easy and not super time consuming and
Yeah, yeah.
collaborative.
Simple.
For everyone involved.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and distill it down into a single document to Jim.
And we're going to prioritize land use because we're going to talk about that one at the meeting on the 14th, correct?
That's the only one that really we have. I mean, we don't even have it really yet. It's just the only
Well,
one.
Jim said once we get the Google Drive link, there's going to be 6 chapters in there, is what I heard.
that's what I heard.
So I think
They're not populated yet, I thought.
Of all the draft
There-
narrative?
there will be 3 initially, and then 3 more coming very shortly after. We've been running the chapters that we're developing the existing conditions through Patrick first to get his comments, and then completing them.
Okay.
So 6 in short order, but 3 initially.
So Jim, you'll send us the links as, I think Dana or Kristen, for the website, the Google Drive, all that stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Are we burned out yet?
Are we there? I think we're there.
All right, cool.
Do I have a motion?
Oh, are you in motion?
Not yet. It's getting close.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn for the night.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed?
54.
Another hour.
It's unanimous.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
You're very welcome. Thank you.